Throughout life, we face unexpected moments, whether exciting or challenging. But few can imagine what happened to Zuc Klemers, a young American who lived an experience capable of completely transforming anyone's vision of life. It was supposed to be just another special day, Zuc's birthday. He woke up early as usual and followed his routine. He went to school, spent time talking and laughing with his friends, and then went to American football training, a sport he loved. Everything seemed normal until, in a resistance training, the tragedy happened. Zuc suddenly collapsed on the lawn, unconscious. What could be a simple malaise soon revealed something much more serious. Without anyone knowing the reason, Zuc's heart had stopped. The moment, which began full of joy and camaraderie, quickly became a scene of despair. His teammates and teachers rushed to help him. One of them tried to perform resuscitation maneuvers, while others called the emergency services. But every attempt to bring Zuc back seemed in vain. He remained motionless, with no heartbeat. Time passed, and with him, the hopes that the boy could survive diminished. When the paramedics arrived at the scene, the seriousness of the situation became even more evident. Zuc was clinically dead. It took 20 minutes of incessant cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR maneuvers, and shocks with the defibrillator for, miraculously, his heart to beat again. Against all odds, Zuc was alive. However, the initial relief gave way to a new concern. The prolonged period without a heartbeat meant that your brain could have suffered irreversible damage due to lack of oxygenation. He was quickly transferred to a local hospital and, from there, to a specialized pediatric unit in a nearby city, where doctors decided to put him into an induced coma. This measure was crucial to prevent the brain from facing even more damage while the body struggled to stabilize itself. The situation was delicate. The doctors weren't sure how Zuc would react when he woke up. For his family, who gathered around him in the hospital, the wait was distressing. Seeing his son lying in an ICU bed, connected to machines that kept his body running, was an almost unbearable pain. There were no guarantees that he would go back to being the same active and healthy boy they knew. But, against all expectations, Zuc not only survived, but also defied any medical prediction. After a few days in an induced coma, he woke up, and when he opened his eyes, he surprised everyone with his lucidity. He recognized the parents, responded to the doctors, and showed clear signs that his recovery would be much more impressive than anyone could imagine. This story, however, is not just a physical miracle. What Zuc experienced during the time he was unconscious is something that transcends scientific explanations. He reported that while his body was motionless, he was taken to a place that he described as indescribably quiet and full of light. Although the details of this experience are revealed in a later context, Zuc's survival and recovery were undoubtedly a source of relief and celebration for everyone around him. More than that, your story is a powerful reminder of how life can change in an instant and how, even in the darkest moments, it is possible to find hope. With his complete recovery, Zuc not only celebrated that year's anniversary, but also saw it as the day his life gained a new meaning. He was reborn, not only physically, but spiritually. Doctors do not have a scientific and detailed explanation for Zuc Klemers' case, but it is a fact that he went through something known as a near-death experience, NDE. Did you know that this phenomenon has already been the subject of intense debates and even inspired works of fiction, such as the Netflix series Bioway? In the plot, EQM is portrayed as one of the factors that allow travel between dimensions. In real life, although there is no proof that those who experience an NDE have, in fact, traveled to another universe or dimension, the reports of these experiences bring impressive and often inexplicable descriptions. In Zuc's case, he described that while he was unconscious, he found himself in a serene and light-filled environment. There he noticed the presence of a man with long hair and beard, who was surrounded by beings he described as angels. For Zuc, that man was Jesus. He said that as he approached, he felt an indescribable peace. The man put his hand on his shoulder and with a soft voice said, "Everything will be fine." It was at that moment that Zuc felt an inexplicable force take care of him. He believes that this strength was what brought his heart back to life, against all medical expectations. The doctors who followed the case were perplexed. For them, it was something completely out of the ordinary. Although experts avoid spiritual explanations, it is impossible to ignore that cases like Zuc's happen around the world, and many share impressive similarities. The question that arises is, what really happens during a near-death experience? Is it a manifestation of the mind? A glimpse of something beyond? Cases of NDE are not rare, and reports similar to Zuc's reinforce the mystery of this phenomenon. In 2008, the renowned neurosurgeon Dr. Alexandre went through something equally extraordinary. After waking up one morning with an unbearable headache and unlike any other he had ever felt, he was rushed to the hospital. After a battery of tests, the diagnosis came: bacterial meningitis. This disease, although more common in newborns, is extremely dangerous for anyone. In the doctor's case, the infection had already reached the cerebrospinal fluid, directly affecting the brain and cortex. The situation was serious. He was quickly put into an induced coma, and the chances of survival were almost zero. The medical team even considered interrupting treatments, believing that recovery was impossible. However, against all odds, Dr. Alexandre woke up, and what he reported was surprising. During the week, he was unconscious. He lived what he described as a spiritual experience that completely changed his vision of life. Before that, he was skeptical about religion or the existence of something beyond earthly life. But his experience was so vivid that he had no doubts. He saw heaven, or paradise, whatever he prefers to call it. He said he felt his soul detach from his body and ascend to a place above pink clouds under a deep blue sky. There, he was surrounded by beings who seemed made of light and transparency. Interestingly, he stated that these beings were not angels in the traditional sense, but they also did not resemble birds or anything else he could identify. The feeling of peace, security, and love he experienced in that place was something he had never felt before. When he returned to consciousness, he was not only physically better, but also spiritually transformed. He came to believe that there was something bigger beyond, something he couldn't accept before. Stories like Zuc and Dr. Alexandre show that the near-death experience is a phenomenon wrapped in mystery, touching on issues that go beyond science and make us reflect on the limits of life and consciousness. Regardless of the explanation that each one chooses to believe, scientific or spiritual, these reports have something in common. They all describe feelings of peace, light, and a profound personal transformation. He stated that, while he was in paradise, he didn't remember anything about his past life and had the feeling that it was a good day for a long time. However, near-death experiences do not always lead to heaven. It is not a rule. What is constant are the sensations that people describe. To explain, Weiss and other scholars mention that the environment is completely different from the Earth. There are reports of people who float outside their bodies and can observe what is happening around them, such as the work of doctors, the conversations of nurses and family members. Many describe being in a tunnel, being guided by a light, or even meeting deceased relatives. These tunnels are often detailed as long and dark, ending in the encounter with a luminous being, or with a great concentration of celestial light. In Zay's case, he did not detail the route anymore, but in the end, he met a man who he believed was Jesus. And how could someone who almost died remember that? Scholars of near-death experiences say that these visions may be the result of the lack of oxygen in the brain, which stimulates the cells of vision abnormally. The sensation of intense light would be explained because these cells, in greater numbers in the central portion of the eye, are activated. As the number of cells is reduced, the intense light dissipates. All these are scientific explanations to try to understand a phenomenon that is not yet fully understood. What is the soul? What is consciousness? What really happens to the brain in life-threatening situations? There are still many questions without definitive answers, as in the case of Zay. His parents, when they heard the whole story, were deeply moved and considered everything a miracle, a divine intervention in the situation. Later, the doctor in charge of the case stated that inflammation and an abnormality in a coronary artery were responsible for the boy's clinical picture. These arteries, essential to bring oxygen and nutrients to the myocardium, are vital for the functioning of the heart. Any disorder can cause serious problems due to the reduced flow of oxygen and nutrients in the heart muscle. In Zay's case, it was recommended that he use a defibrillator vest daily. This equipment, similar to a common defibrillator, is able to detect anomalies in heart rhythm and generate shocks to correct the problem. After all, there is no guarantee that the miracle will occur twice. After everything that happened, Zay returned home and had the opportunity to celebrate a special birthday, marking his second chance to live. We don't have this opportunity every day, right? The boy went on with a more understanding personality than before, as if a new Zay had been born. And you? Do you believe in near-death experiences? Have you ever had one? Or do you know someone who has been through this? Maybe these stories can help us reflect on what happens to us in the face of the unknown. A big hug, and see you next time.